All right, all right, all right, all right. Happy Friday. I want to welcome everybody who's jumping on today live in the audience. We got some offices and some people joining us today. In my opinion, we got an awesome, awesome guest today. Very good friend of mine, Gurneet, is joining us. First of all, good morning, Gurneet. Thank you so much for joining us
Good
today.
morning, Ken. Very excited and thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So, as you guys may know, you'll find us on YouTube. You'll find us on Instagram and TikTok and all these other places. But please subscribe if you haven't done that quite yet. And I'll tell you, our mission on the Clear Channel is to help change the world one leader at a time. And Gurneet, first of all, I know you even watched this channel, right? Or we were just talking about it.
I watch your channel every week. I look for new content every week. I'm very thankful for because we never had this before, and I think in the recent times after COVID times, the fact that a lot of the people in the business of coming out with videos and content. I think from a leader's perspective, this is the shortcut. I mean, the content's for us to learn, and even for me as someone an owner in the business, it just I enjoy the learning, and I think there's so much beautiful content out there. So I think everybody, if you subscribe, listen, there's a lot of stuff to learn from there. So yeah.
I love it. Thank you. And Gurney, tell us about this before we get into your
Sure.
background, or I'm sorry, your business and how it's doing, because it's doing fantastic. Tell us about growing up. Where are you from? What's your background, your family? Where do you live now? Things like that.
Yeah, so my background's from India. So my parents are Indian immigrants, and they came here when I came to the country when I was 3 years old. So dad kind of left India, just kind of he's like, hey, I want to go overseas, build the best life for my children, and that's what he did. And when he got here, he worked very odd jobs and was cleaning and doing dishwashing and doing multiple jobs just to make ends meet. Got a job at a sneaker store and learned the sneaker business. And one day, a person walked in and he was like, "Hey," he became really good friends with my dad. And he was like, "Look, I'll give you some money so you can open up your sneaker business." And my dad's like, "That's weird," but my dad was like, "All right." He's naive. He took the money. He didn't realize he took the money from the mafia. And when you opened the store, the mafia guys came and they're like, "Hey, you got to pay this money back." So my dad was so super scared. He still talks about the story, but then he worked another job and ran the business to pay the money back, and he did eventually 3 years later. And then that ended up, and he
Wow.
ended up having 15 sneaker stores eventually in Brooklyn. So yeah, so that's where the background. It's my dad does, and then eventually, my mom got into the business. I have two other siblings. One's 20. The other one's actually getting married this upcoming week. He's 30, and they're all in different fields. But yeah, that's kind of my family background.
Wow. And where did you grow up? Like, so was it in the Northeast then mainly?
Yeah. So I'm from New York, so that's where I went to school in New York. I went to school for. It's funny because growing up, I was a very spoiled brat. If I touched something, I had it, and my dad realized that my son's kind of going into the wrong path in the early, like right during I was about to graduate high school. And he's like, I got to do something about it because if I don't, like, he's never going to learn, and I'm failing, setting my son up for failure. So I remember coming home from high school, graduating high school, and my dad's like, I got a surprise for you. I'm like, and in my head, I'm like, wow, I'm going to Europe. He's sending me to a really cool trip for just graduating high school. And then he sat me down. He's like, look, he's like, I've given you everything you wanted, but you've become extremely spoiled and you don't know the value of a dollar. So I got you a job in the airport pushing wheelchairs, working the entire summer, and you're going to do it overnight so you understand what the value of a dollar is because you don't know. And he's like, if you don't do it, you're going to get kicked out of the house. Now, me coming from an Indian family, I'm like, well, that, yeah,
Wow.
me coming from the Indian family, I'm like, that'll never happen. Right. But no,
Right, he's just messing with me.
but it actually, he was serious. And I kid you not, Ken, that experience changed my life forever. Before that, I wanted to go to Florida State University. Everybody knows why. I thought it was a great partying school. I wanted the college life. After that experience, I went to community school. I got my bachelor's from Brew College in the city. And then the only thing he ever wanted was for me to get an MBA from Ivy League school, and I got that from Columbia. So I was literally kind of brought up in New York. Yeah.
Wow. And so in Colombia, getting your master's,
Yeah.
right? So I'm sure a ton of very educated, a ton of people from all over the world, right? Because Columbia is, speaking of Ivy League, not only an Ivy League school, but it's a fantastic Ivy League school. What was the competition like in class, and what were there a lot of entrepreneurs or a lot of like business people? Like, how was that
I
community?
mean,
How's that
you know,
community?
it's mind blowing, um, Ken, and I'm not proud of actually saying this, but I'm actually going to share it. So I didn't even have the credentials to get into Columbia. When you have an Ivy League, if you ever fill out an Ivy League at school application, there's a section for donation, and my dad put in some donation, and that's what I'm thinking that I got into that school. But when I got into
Hmm.
the school, Ken, I realized how much people actually, the ones with scholarships, and how much work they're putting in, and what they're doing to really kind of get ahead of the game. I mean, the mentality was different because you really have to do well. The pressure's on, right? And for some reason, obviously, I didn't feel the pressure because that's just my family's background. But you see the people that put in the work, and even until that point, I didn't feel like I've accomplished anything because I feel like everything was kind of given to me.
Hmm.
And even afterwards, when because right afterwards I went, I was an analyst in J.P. Morgan, and I got that position because my cousin worked there,
Hmm.
and then I got into Goldman Sachs as an investment banker because my uncle worked there. So up until that point, I didn't feel like I've accomplished anything. But you really see, like, and now that I think about it, 10 years ago, I was like, there's people that work twice as hard to get into companies like this, to get an interview. They've put in so much work, and I feel bad. I was like, there's so many people out there that are doing the right things. And sometimes I was like, it's still kind of hard to just kind of think about it sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, so you go from getting your master's from a fantastic school. You work in New York City for some of the biggest corporations on the planet, and J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs. Like these are the biggest of their kind in the Northeast. And then you decide to be in sales, more in the entrepreneurship. What was the transition? Why did you make that
Yeah,
move?
so growing up in New York, the biggest thing that I always saw on TV was, all right, Gurney, you're gonna grow up, you're gonna wear a nice suit, you're gonna have the nice leather bag, and one day you're gonna tell people you work in the city, you live in the city, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Well, when I actually started working in Wall Street, I really figured out that everything that you hear is kind of delusional. When someone says they live in the city, they never tell you that they live with four other roommates in an apartment. Yeah,
Right.
or and for me, I came from even though I was spoiled, but I had really good values and principles in life that my parents kind of raised me with. And I always wanted to do work, which was, it was the right ethics and morals. And I'm not saying Wall Street's not that. There were great people that I worked with. But one day I'm reporting to the person I talked to. I'm like, look, man, I work here. I'm here 80, 90 hours a week, right? Sometimes I even have to be here Saturday because I was working with overseas markets. And I'm like, how do I move up here? No one even knows my name. There's like three people there that know my name. I'm just coming here to come to work. And he gave me such a silly, someone gives you like this like evil smirk kind of answer. He's like, ah man, like he's like, you're making money. He's like, why do you need to move up? He was like, just wait until someone leaves or someone dies. I'm like, well, that and that answer, number one, didn't sit well with me. And number two, the the environment. I was working with a lot of people in that environment that would do. I'm not saying everybody was like that, but the people that were around me cheated on their wives. They were doing a lot of wrong things that just didn't set well with my values. And even though I was making a lot of money, but I would wake up Sunday really tired, and I'm not able to enjoy nothing, right? And I'm not able to do anything with my time. So I made the biggest decision of my life, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to resign. And I told my dad this, and I actually did it. I told him after I did it. I kid you not, Ken. The next day, he had about 20 uncles in the house telling me why my son made the worst decision of his life.
Oh man.
And yeah,
The
the
intervention.
intervention, right? And then from there, what ended up happening was he gave me an option. He's like, he feel bad for me. He was like, look, he's like, I want you to be successful. So he's like, I'm going to give you the option to take care of all the sneaker stores. So he's going to keep me in the business, hand everything over to me so I can carry the family's legacy. And I had a moment to think about it. It's like, you know what, Gurneet? God forbid 20 years from now, 15 years from now, 30 years from now, you lose everything. Your parents are not there. God forbid. If you've never worked hard for something, how would you ever get out of that situation? Because you wouldn't know. And sneakers weren't my passion. So I was like, Dad, no, I'm sorry. I love the offer, but I really want to do something on my own that's going to get me ahead. And just like a lot of the people on this call came in for interviews, same way I did, not knowing what I was getting myself into. But the person that did my interview at that moment, his name was Grant. I still remember his name. Young, 33-year-old professional, which I was like, seemed highly successful at the moment. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, and I just connected with him. And that's where my story started, you know?
Wow. It's very interesting, right? Because, being a dad now and seeing my boys make decisions and the other day, my little guy told me I was the problem. It wasn't that he was upset about something. I was the reason he's upset, kind of thing. Like I just think about as these kids get older and older, the conversations we're gonna have and how hard it must be to kind of and listen. Clearly, it's worked out, right? So clearly, the decisions you've made have kind of taken you on this path, and we'll talk about that here more in a minute. But the initial moment is like, man, are we making the right decision, right? Working for these massive companies on Wall Street. To your point, I remember being at Penn State, and that was my goal. I was studying business and marketing. I was thinking about getting my MBA, but the whole goal for anyone at Penn State that wanted to make it was to make their way to New York City and work on Wall Street, live in Hoboken, and that's what my brother did, right? So I remember thinking about that. It gives me goosebumps thinking about it. Like that was like the path. That was to your point, what people say that you should do. And then I know I too went on an interview just like you did many years ago and sat with Michael, and it's my story, how my story began, right? And my journey of sales and entrepreneurship, right? So very neat. So you fall into this industry of sales. How were you in sales?
Oh
And
my
were you
God.
were you good when you
Yeah.
started, or how
Well,
did it go?
funny, very funny story. So for a lot, maybe some guys can relate to me, but I was horrible. First of all, before accepting the sales position, I used to reject every sales position because I thought it was never for me. But I just connected with this guy, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And like he was talking about the opportunity, the whole 9 yards. And at that time, we were in Home Depot, and we used to walk around Home Depots. And I remember my first day of business. We walk in. It was in 1769 Marcus Avenue, New Hyde Park, and I see a statue of Jordan Belfort, and I'm like, why is there a statue of Jordan Belfort in the building? Why is there's a statue of a scam artist in the building? I didn't understand it. And then I realized that he actually operated from that building on the top floor. So that was like his whole, yeah. So
Wow.
I walked in and I went to the lobby and I looked towards the lobby. I kid you not, Ken, there were like 70 people practice pitching with the biggest smile in their face. And I've never seen it. And I was like, this is weird. I panicked right away. I was like, where's my cubicle where I'm going to work off? And I was like, what is really happening here? And at that moment, I was like, you know what, Gurneet, this doesn't seem like the place that I want to be at. So let me just leave. Let me open up the door. No one's even watching me. I go to open up the door. The person that hired me screamed my name. He was like, Gurneet. I'm like, oh, crap. They caught me.
He knows I'm here.
So I was like, you know what? All right, let me just stay here. And that day changed my life. I stayed, and I thank God that moment happened, because if I had never walked out, I would never be where I'm at 10 years later. And I learned that day never to judge anything by its cover. We sometimes assume so much about things, and our walls are so much in our brain that when we take those walls down and we allow ourselves to get a little bit uncomfortable, we allow ourselves to learn, we allow ourselves to be more open. There's so much possibilities we have that we never knew.
Yeah,
And
so
And
true.
then we went into training, and I was horrible. Like, I didn't start pitching until my fourth day. And because she was having a serious conversation with me, she's like, look, it's your fourth day. You're not even going to say hi to anybody. And
You actually have to do
yeah,
this.
she's like, you actually have to do this. And she got me mad. And I was in the Home Depot. I went to the Home Depot bathroom for a second. And I looked myself in the mirror. I was like, Gurneet, you just left a $200,000 job for you to not even get out of your comfort zone. You can't even go say hello to anybody. So I got really ramped up and looking at myself. I was like, you know what? She wants me to go say hello. I was like, she wants me to go say hello. I'm going to get out of this Home Depot. I'm going to go say hello to the first person I see. And the first person I saw was like, hello. And it was like, and that conversation was great. I was like, oh, it wasn't too bad. I didn't sell nothing, but I was like, oh, that wasn't too bad at all. And that's how it started. Now, my journey in the business, as everything I had to learn. I was the most charismatic guy. I wasn't the most. I didn't have the biggest personality at all, but I had work ethic, and I became a really good student in the business. Right? I realized that there's some people that were constantly being spoken about in the office every day. So I was like, you know what, Grenade? Why don't I make these people my best friends? Right? And I did that. And I copied the best. I kept going to them. I kept coming early. I kept networking because I wanted to get better. Right? I wanted to do better. Like I wanted to prove to myself that I can do this. And I just ended up copying, asking questions, and I kept getting better and better every single day.
I love it. I love it. And then as you grew in the business, obviously you get down the sales, you become more consistent. Any big challenges about your own leadership and mentoring staff or responsibility? Any big hurdles you had?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of those. So, one of I always say the business, you kind of have two stages in the business, right? And for a few months, I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I love the business, but sometimes I always say the business kind of exposes you, right? You think you're doing all the right things until you really walk into our industry and you really realize, like, you're like, wow, like, I have a lot of things that I need to work on. And for me, the challenges that I faced was that I wanted the nice lifestyle the business was trying to give, but I was getting into my own way. I didn't want to do the work. And a lot of times in the process of that, what ends up happening, you start blaming the business and everybody else around you but you. And I was the best at doing that, right? I was the one that blamed the business. I was the one that blamed the owner. I was the one that blamed the stores. I was the one that complained every day about something not going my way. And until I realized that, Gurneet, and until he sat me down, he's like, look, he's like, the biggest person you're not blaming is yourself. He's like, you want all the nice things, but you don't want to put in the work for it. You have one of the worst attitudes in the business about looking at things. And, and I'm like, I just processed that conversation. Because he was like, you contradict yourself. You say all the negative things, but you're the first one in the office every day. If you hated it so much, why are you the first one in the office? Right? And then I realized, I was like, look, I was like, the reason why I'm not building, the reason why I'm not able to grow a team is because look at the type of conversations I'm having with myself. I'm not being the right example. So I realized coaching becomes easier if you just do the right things.
Yeah.
Right? And for a lot of us, that's
Weird.
weird how that
Weird.
works. So like I started set the pace. I started to be the first one and I looked the sharpest. I had the businesses back. I constantly spoke and encouraged networking. I did all the things that I would want my mentor to do. And I asked myself the question, would I coach, like, if I had a son, would I be my son's coach? Am I the best person? And if I'm not, I have to figure out what I have to do right. And in my coaching moments, when I was building a team, at first I was extremely good buddy of theirs. That didn't work because when you're a buddy, they don't really respect you when you tell them something. Then my second time rebuilding, I became a complete dictator. I just kept bossing people, right? And that didn't work. So I realized how to have a really good balance of really being personal, but at the same time showing them a logical way of leading the right way. And that happens by building relationships. I was the best relationship builder in the office. I did a lot of dinners. I did a lot of breakfast. I came in early and I was the right example. And I never told anyone to do something that I would never do. And just the team just became bigger and bigger by doing that.
I love it. And speed it up. Obviously you've been in the industry now 10 years. Your business this past year did I think 1.5 million. If I were to be, is
It
that
was like
right?
one
I'm trying
point
to think off the top of my head.
1.7 something. So yeah,
Yeah,
around that.
details,
Yes.
details. 1.7 million in revenue. You have multiple locations. You've grown your organization. This year, you're on pace to do 2.5 million in business, which is really exciting. In our industry, we get reports right from a lot of our partners in the business. You're the third highest revenue producer in the industry, from what we talked about yesterday in a call that we were both on, which is really exciting. So entrepreneurship, there's so many people that watch this channel that are entrepreneurs themselves that want to improve their craft. There's some people that are young into their careers that maybe someday aspire to be an entrepreneur, and run a business or be in management and senior leadership. Um, I will ask you this question. Was it worth it?
So worth it. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you some deep moments. It's even more worth it when things happen in your life and they're not good things that happen in your life, and you realize the choices you made were so important. Um, my wife's mother has been extremely sick, and we've taken her kind of all over the world, for different treatments and different reasons. But a lot of those resources cost a lot of money. And when these incidents happen, one of the biggest things that I was able to contribute as a husband was, how can I help? And when I looked at the past 10 years and what I've done, we gave her the best treatment in the States. We gave her the best treatment overseas. And is she getting better? Yes. Now, I just feel good knowing that at least we are trying. And I never have to worry about that there's less resources. I tell her every day that whatever you need, I will be here. And I will support you in every way possible. And I think there's a lot of good moments, obviously, I had with entrepreneurship. I mean, my mom's on my payroll. I bought my parents houses, and I've taken them to really cool stuff. That's all good and great, but like no one realizes the power of what you do until like something bad happens, and we don't realize those moments. In the past 2 days, my dad's been in the hospital, and he's we got a phone call the other day that, hey, you might have a congestive heart failure. You need to rush him to the hospital. And we've been there the past couple of days. And yesterday, there's two moments I've seen my dad cry. The first time was my first year of business when I saved up $60,000 in 4 months of running a business, and he teared up because he never thought he would do that. He didn't make a dollar profit 2 years in, and and
Wow.
since then, we haven't really spoken about my finances, but he knows. And yesterday, me and him in the hospital, and it was right after our call. We had like a 2 hour deep conversation. He just kind of went over to my finances, the whole 9 yards, and I kind of showed him what we do and what his son's doing. And it's the second time I saw my dad so emotional, and I felt I accomplished the world seeing my dad so happy and so proud. But these are the moments you live for, right? I'm like, IVF, I've done well. I made a lot of money, and you know, my dad has very bad health problems. And every experience I get to do with him, I think it's the coolest thing. Last year, he was watching a TV show. He's like, Gurneet, let's go to Scotland, out of nowhere, because he's a big whiskey guy. He's a big whiskey guy. I'm like, okay. I kid you not. I booked the tickets the next day, flew him out business class. It was just me and my dad. I never had that. And bought some exotic whiskeys, which I don't want to say the amount, but they costed a lot of money. But just to see him happy and experience that.
Yeah.
So when people ask me, is entrepreneurship worth it? Yes, it is. 100% it is. Because you can do things that those memories will last you a lifetime. And not even that, for me, the biggest change is how I see my guys do well, the impact we make in people's lives. That's the beautiful part about our business. I don't win if my guys don't do well.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. It's a very interesting concept, right? So I know you and I align a lot in our values and how our parents raised us, and And how my mom would like, force feed you at the dinner table. No, 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 please,
Yes.
please, more lasagna. And I remember my best friend Taylor is like, no, Mrs. Lear, I'm full. He's like, okay, okay, fine, I'll have one more. Like she'd like force it on you. And then she would, if it was cold out and it was, she'd take her jacket off and give it to you, kind of thing. She would be cold because the right thing to give and to serve. And and I think that's a very unique thing about leadership and about entrepreneurship and even our industry, right? So if you're selfish, sales, okay, fine, you'll learn sales. Selfishly, you'll make some money. But if you want to lead and lead at a high level in any organization, you have to be
Yes.
selfless. You have to give long before you get in return. And I think that's a very unique advantage we have for people who have great values, right? Because if people don't have great values and they cut corners and they do things, that their long-term growth potential, I think in life and business is just
Yeah,
limited, right?
100%.
Because they're not gonna be able to give as much as they need to. So well, listen, I appreciate you jumping on today, Gurneet. I'm so proud of you, man. I know we've gotten to know each other a lot over the last 2 years or so. Our paths and the clients we work with and everything. I'm sorry to hear about Dad. I know we hadn't talked about that in the last few days, but you've had a lot of challenges in your last 6 to 12 months with family. And I know a few times we've kind of touched base and you were traveling, you're in London, you're in other places, right? And I know a lot of it's because of stepping up and helping out, with the care that was needed at certain times. But yeah, I just appreciate your friendship, man, and your example. And obviously you've had a ton of recognition in the different conferences we go to. It's great to see you win. I'm super proud of that.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. I can appreciate. I always tell people that I told you this the other day. I wanted to emulate you. I feel like we share a lot of values and principles together. And guys, like you go through a lot of stuff in life. The life happens to everybody. It's how you come out of it, right? I always tell people there's always going to be issues, there's always going to be problems, but you got to fight. And we're blessed. We live in the best country in the world. We wake up every day wanting to change our dreams, and we can make it happen every single day. And today could be a start for somebody. I always said, don't be the victim of your circumstances. Fuel it and go after it. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, Gurneet, thank you so much for your time. Hang tight because we got to let this thing record. But again, thank you for everyone jumped on live today. Happy Friday. And thank you again for helping us change the world one leader at a time. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.